Hi, everyone. Stephanie again with Kimberly for the last and third segment of our conversation. And Kimberly, just to sum up, I mean, you were diagnosed at 35 with marginal zone lymphoma, a rare cancer. The good news is it was caught early. So your doctor was like, it's basically stage 0. You go through 6 months of chemo, rituximab, bendamustine, had minimal impact on your life, which is not something we hear very much. So that's great. And the
Yeah.
best part of the story is yet to come, which is what's baking right now in your oven. And we'll pop up a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I would love to dedicate this segment to the issue of fertility, right? You're diagnosed young and it kind of forces the conversation, whether you are ready for the conversation or not, just about family and what the vision is. So when you were diagnosed, can you talk about whose idea it was to go see a fertility doctor and, why that was so important to you?
Yeah, when I got first diagnosed, I didn't even realize about family, like us having a family. So it was my aunt who was in the room with us. She's like, "Is this gonna impact her fertility?" And it dawned time. It's like, "Yeah, we just got married in March. It's December." What happens if if that does if everything is affected? So, my doctor was able to say that was able to refer us to a couple of fertility doctors, and just to be safe, to go through fertility preservation. So we went to our fertility doctor at RMA of New Jersey, in Morristown, and she was able to present us with either freezing eggs or freezing embryos. And at that point, like, the chances of thawing an embryo was a lot better than thawing a frozen egg. And then going through IVF, at least at this point with the frozen embryo already, we were kind of already halfway there. All it needed was to just be thawed out and then implanted back in me.
Mm.
So that was done. Everything was done really fast. So I got my diagnosis in December. Egg retrieval was done in February, and a couple weeks later was my first chemo treatment. So everything had to be done fast just because we wanted chemo to start right away and not prolong it any longer. But with the whole fertility medicine and the shots and the monitoring, it took it was chemo was pushed back probably about a month, which
Mhm.
wasn't so bad, and it didn't affect, and they obviously had to ask permission
Right.
from my doctor, but
Yeah.
that didn't really impact anything, so,
Can you
eh
describe the process? I know it's an expedited process for cancer patients. I had undergone it as well, actually. But if you could describe, I mean, it's like shots and a lot of blood tests and ultrasounds. I mean, I know this happened a couple years ago, but yeah, walk us through that the couple of weeks it took before the egg retrieval.
yeah, so it was a lot of blood work for me and my husband, but mostly for me because it was probably just a couple of vials from him. But for me, it was different. I had to go through morning monitoring, which is going through the to the to the clinic every other day, so they could check my hormone levels. They would draw blood, just a small amount, but enough for it to be annoying. Um, to check my hormone levels and to see where everything was and to see what stage I was at. And I and that was pretty much it. So and then I basically let them know when I got my period, and then basically start over from there, see where everything was. So I think it was about a month of monitoring basically. And then when it was time for getting ready for egg retrieval, it was shots and making sure the timing was right every night. And it was about two or three different types of shots in one night. And at one point, like, my husband was helping me, like, because my hands would start to get sweaty and then it just wouldn't work. So I'm just like, oh, geez. And then, like, ice packs were involved because, the abdomen area started to swell after the shots. And it was a lot. And I think that for me was more stressful than the chemo itself.
Right, right. It's very involved, and now it's bringing back all these memories for me too, where you're having to inject these hormones into your belly,
Yeah.
essentially,
Uh-huh.
and a couple times a day. Mentally, right? It's also kind of like it can really screw with your mind the moment before
Yeah.
you do it. Any tips for women who are like, "Oh my gosh, I hate needles. How am I supposed to inject myself with a needle?"
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of needles either. I still can't watch being blood work being done on me. Like when the needle enters the skin, I can't watch, but when them changing out the tubes, I can watch fine. It's just the whole initial entry that I do not like. So when I had knowing I had to do that myself, it was basically taking a couple deep breaths before and just like you're doing this for you're doing this for yourself, for your future family. And he goes, it's good that you're doing this.
A little pep talk for yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. And then it also helped that my husband's like, he would say thank you because like this was for us.
Yeah. That's good. Good job, Kimberly's husband.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, speaking of, I mean, it's I don't know if you had to go through this. I think you do because of the paperwork part. Just they have to cover all the bases. But did you and your husband have to go through and check all the if this happens?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
an interesting sort of
That
of
that was like an eye opener for us because it's like, okay, well, what happens if? And there was a lot of if questions. And it's just like, and both of us are Catholic. So it was like the options that they were giving us. I mean, it's not that we're super religious. We were both brought up Catholic, but the options that they were giving us weren't the ones that we wanted. So it was the only options were either donate to science or discard. And you're like, no, I don't want to do either. Like it's just that's terrible. Um,
and you're talking about when they say like in the case of like if you guys separate or divorce or if
yeah,
one
and it
dies or if one
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, if one dies, or if both of you die, or if you guys are no longer married, like if you guys divorce, like what happens? Or if you become pregnant, and you guys separate, like what happened? And it was just so many different scenarios that it was just like, how do you come up with these things? Like, seriously.
But I'm glad we're talking about this only because it's one of those things that you don't think about beforehand, but you're
Yeah,
thrust into a lot of conversations
yeah,
whether you're ready or not.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, and I remember ours, there's a lot of pages and then having to initial everything. So
Uh-huh.
there's that whole side of things, right? Not
Yeah,
just the physical giving yourself shots.
yeah.
But it sounds like you guys were able to get through that part okay.
Yeah, yeah, he was not very happy after we got through that whole contract consent form thing, and, like, at one point, he goes, "I just don't wanna answer these questions anymore, just put the same answer for everything," and I'm like, "Okay," and I'm just, like, checking them off, and I'm just like, "Okay, now you need to sign," and he's like, "Seriously?" I'm like, "Yeah, we both need to sign this."
Yeah, I know, but then you guys were able to put that behind you, and then a whole nother part of this is also the financial. I mean, it's prohibitive for some people because it's
Yeah,
costly. It's
yeah,
procedure, it's the storing of the eggs. How did
yeah.
you and your husband approach the financial aspect of this?
Um, we we actually, took out my 401k for it because we knew we wanted a family eventually. We just didn't know when it was going to happen. So at this point, um, I had a lot of money saved in my 401k from my previous job. So we took that out. We basically paid for fertility treatments for it, and as well as the other bills that needed to be paid along with it. Um, and so that was a huge chunk of change. That was a big check to write.
Yes, lots of digits.
Yeah, yeah, and then, so we were fine, once everything was said and done and frozen, everything was good, and then we get a bill for the yearly storage fee, and we're like, "What?"
You're like, "Wait, I paid everything. What's this number
We're like,
again?"
"I thought it was okay, I thought we didn't have to pay a storage fee," and it's just like, "No, you just pay for the year," and it's just like, "Oh, okay," so, we
Yeah.
paid the storage fee for the year, and then that's when the discussion happened of do you want to, like, instead of them giving us a bill for next year, do you want to just
Uh-huh.
try one and see how,
Mm.
how it, like, if it's going to work or not. So,
Quick question, and I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to give specifics, but for people who are curious about cost, and I know it just depends on different things, but ballpark,
yeah.
what were you looking at in terms of the actual egg harvesting retrieval itself, and then how much was the storage per year? Again, but just ballpark.
Yeah, that's fine. The whole process itself, because it wasn't covered under insurance,
Yeah.
was about, I want to say $7,000.
Mm.
Storage for the year was about 1,000 to 1,500 a
Ooh.
year. Um, and then, we went through the implant, and that was, thankfully it wasn't a lot because insurance did cover some of that part. So it
No.
was a lot less than than what we were thinking of. So
Good.
yeah.
Relief there. So insurance did cover part of the implant process, just not the.
Yeah, because it was more considered as IVF at that point.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
but everything else beforehand
Right.
wasn't covered under insurance.
And just for people to know too, there are programs out there that help because the medication costs for the hormone injections are a big part of the cost. And
Yeah,
there are programs out there that help subsidize for cancer patients. So be sure to
yeah.
look there. And thepatientstory.com has some resources as well. But okay, so then you and your husband, and what's his name?
Tim.
Tim. Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, so Tim and Kim. Yeah.
I love that. So he and you talk about, okay, let's give it a go. So what was the process after you made the decision that
Yeah.
you wanted to give it a shot? What was that procedure like?
It was mostly like, so, Christmas time rolls around, and at that point we're like, we're gonna get a bill in January for the embryos that are frozen. What do you want? Like, do you think it's time to start having a family? And he goes, yeah, let's try. I was like, okay. I was like, I guess I'll just call our fertility doctor in December and see if we can get an appointment for January. And that was pretty much it. That was how our conversation went.
Yeah,
Um,
no time like the present, right?
yeah, yeah,
Oh, and by the way, and again, don't mean to put you on the spot, but like, so you don't have to give a number, but after your retrieval, because I know it goes through a process, they get this many eggs and then this many are viable, and then you freeze this many embryos. And I just want people to understand that the number does, typically go down for
mhm.
you, whatever you're comfortable sharing, but like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So during while I was taking the hormone shots, they do the sonogram and the blood work every other day in the morning, and they were looking at 12, like they would see on the sonogram 12 eggs. So I'm like, okay, that's a good chance. That's a good shot. And so the egg retrieval came, and the nurse was like, we were able to get 7. And I'm just like, 7? There was 12 the other day. I go, I don't know what's going on. But
Right.
they're like, yeah, the other ones weren't viable. And we're like, okay. So they did. Um, um, so they combined my eggs and his sperm together, and then it came down to 4.
Mhm.
And so we're just like, all right, we could do with 4. They're
Yeah.
like, but not just a regular 4. And we're like, what do you mean? They're like, 2 are normal, 2 are what we call mosaic. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? They're like, well, it doesn't mean, it's like it either means that they're missing something or there's an additional of something. We're just not sure because the part that they took for genetic testing didn't really come back definitive.
Mhm.
So we have we ended up having 2 normal embryos and 2 mosaic embryos. So this was 2 years ago when this happened. So when I called in January about um getting one implanted, one of the normal ones, because they wouldn't let you do the mosaic ones first. You got to go through the normal ones first. Um, they said that because it's been 2 years since everything has happened, the mosaic ones, the people that have used their mosaic embryos are just as viable as the normal ones. So they do end up becoming normal like in one way, like just basically they end up being a normal embryo at
Oh,
some point during the pregnancy. But granted, it would like a lot of invasive testing would need to be done, like an amniocentesis, which I found out has a 5% of a miscarriage. And I'm just like, oh boy. I
so
was like,
nice.
so, so I mean, we used one normal embryo. We have another normal embryo that's frozen, and we have 2 mosaic ones.
Okay.
So before we had to go through serious counseling, like before using the mosaic ones. I think now, 2 years later, that I, I think they would, I think they just use it as like treat it like a normal embryo, because the research has been found that they do end up becoming normal, and that whatever was missing or added ends up working out
That's
somehow on its own.
good.
Not sure how it is, but that's
Yeah.
basically what they said.
Right, we don't know the science or whatever, but the point is that that's actually great
Yeah,
news. Yeah, okay. So and then
yeah, yeah.
they implanted the one normal and it took, right? And
It
so
took.
that's
It took.
amazing.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. August 7th was when the implant took place. And then 2 days later, like it was weird because it happened on a Friday. And then that following day, one of our cousins was getting married. And so like everything was off limits. um, and then I went in on Sunday morning to get a pregnancy test done. And a couple hours later, they called to say that we were pregnant.
and that's amazing news. That's what we oh my gosh, it's the best news possible. This picture is from the retrieval, right? Not from
Yeah,
okay.
the egg retrieval. Yeah.
Wanted to pop that up anyway. So the implant process itself, like what does that entail? If you could just describe, like you go in and did you have to fast and then how, just yeah, how it all happened.
Yeah, I don't think I had to fast. I remember it happened in the morning, and that I think a half hour before I went in, I had to drink about 16 ounces of fluid, whatever it may be. It could have been, it could be water, juice, coffee. They didn't really care as long as it was 16 ounces of something. And I didn't know why, but then they're just like, oh, so we could see better because your bladder would be full and it would expand everything, in your uterus. And I was just like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. um, it was almost, the best way to describe it was almost just like a GYN exam, a yearly GYN exam almost, where, there's just a lot more people in the room other than you and your doctor. There's a person, with with the sonogram, making sure like everything's like the doctor's in the right place in your uterus, implanting it in the spot where it's supposed to be. And that was pretty much it. I mean, it was just like a tiny, tiny little thing, like, but um, I mean, it was pretty cool to see. It's just like you could just see everything happening on a monitor next to you, and that was pretty much it.
So what did you feel during that procedure? Was it just like did you feel any prick? Was there any local anesthesia or it was just, no, you just, yeah.
No, yeah, it was like I said, it was like a normal GYN exam, but actually more comfortable in a way because I know because they're not comfortable normally. But no, I didn't feel a prick. It was yeah, I barely felt anything at all. I just saw it happening, and I was just like, all right. And I'm just like,
Can you
that's it.
can you
Okay.
describe what you're seeing on the screen? Like you're seeing, yeah, what's
So I saw like my uterus, like where they wanted to implant the embryo. And then you would see like a little catheter come into the screen, and then that's where the embryo was.
Mm.
And then she would just like kind of lay it down onto, or like inject it into like my uterine wall. And then that was pretty much it. Like it was so simple and yet so complicated at the same time that I was just like, okay.
Well, I am so happy to hear that, and now I get to pop up the best picture of all. Can you describe the moment when, yeah, that August 9th, and you're getting, there's so much building up to this moment, and then finally you get the news that it
Yeah. Yeah, we were nervous because we didn't know if we would get the news right away or there he is, or if um if we would wait for it. Like, I don't know if we didn't know if we'd hang around the office until they'd let us know or they'd call us to let us know. But the nurse was just like, okay, we'll call you in a few hours when it's done. We're just like, all right. So we finally got the call, and we just told our immediate family and our closest friends. And then we didn't really tell everyone in the world. Basically, we didn't put it up on our social media until I was after the 3-month mark.
oh,
But hearing his heartbeat was amazing for the first time.
mm,
Like, seeing him grow throughout the sonogram is awesome. The only thing that kind of sucks is that it's during COVID and that
oh,
my husband couldn't see much of it. Like, he was only able to come for one appointment, and that was the first trimester screening. So he was able to see this picture live. So that was good. But everything else after that, like, he wasn't allowed to come anymore. So,
oh,
but
COVID.
yeah, I know. But I bring home the sonogram pictures and I tell him what the doctor says, and he's just as happy and excited about it as
I'm
everyone else is in the family.
Congrats to both you and Tim. Just
Thank
amazing.
you.
I'm so excited for you both. Any last thing you want to say about this whole fertility journey or experience, for the men and women who are interested, especially those who are dealing with cancer, whether they're the patient or the caregiver? Just, yeah, anything you'd like to say to them?
Yeah, it's it's rough. It's not easy, but it's so worth it in the end. Like, the reward is definitely higher than the risk, and it's so much better. It like, knowing that you can have a family even after cancer is it's the light at the end of the tunnel.
I love that. And it just preserves options, right? It's kind of like this
Yeah,
insurance policy that I've heard, even from me personally, it was kind of like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, what we'll decide, but we have options.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And how are you, I mean, how are you thinking about I know this is kind of jumping the gun a little bit because we still have to meet baby boy first, but you still have three, right? So how do you
Yeah.
and your husband think about that?
Um, well, I mean, I am by the time I give birth to the baby, I'll be 39. So time is not on my side. Definitely. Um, so I mean, we'll have this baby boy, and then probably a year after he turns 1, we'll assess the situation and, try to use the other ones. As long as I'm healthy and I'm able to carry, we're gonna do our best to carry or all 4 of them if we can.
Wow. Yeah, because you have them, and such blessings, after
Yeah.
what you went through. So congratulations again. Do you have
Yeah.
a name picked out? You don't have to tell us,
Yeah.
but
No, we do. Um, we're naming him after my husband's dad, Andrew James. So we'll call him AJ for short.
oh, I love that. Oh,
Yeah.
yay. You heard it here first. No, I'm just kidding. AJ O'Connor is it was
Yep.
I love that. I'm so excited for you and for Tim, for AJ, for your extended family. And I want to say thank you for sharing your story with us today, especially this fertility journey, because it's such a wonderful, delicious story,
Yeah.
to sort of top it all off. And yeah, we'll keep in touch, and hopefully you can send us a photo of AJ so we can put that on your story as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you, Kimberly. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
And for everyone, for Kimberly's full story, don't forget to go to thepatientstory.com where we provide human answers to your cancer questions.